All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, March 26th. So a pretty, I don't know what's the adjective I want to use. I'll just say an interesting day. A lot of fades, I would say, from where we were in the beginning of the day, but a lot of names did pretty well, and it's one of those things. I hate to use this. I hate to use this saying of being at a stock picker's market because that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easy. When you hear stock picker's market, you have to be in the right stocks. So let me go through a little bit of today's price action, and we'll talk about the Qs, we'll talk about IWM, transports, regional banks, a couple other areas. But you really, for you to have a great day, you had to basically take a lot of profits in the beginning of the day and also just be in the right stocks and be out of the ones that got hurt a little bit today. So where are we with the S&P futures? We'll start with the chart. A bounce day. We're kind of recovering some of that action that we saw on Friday. Did not close on the highs. So again, like I said, we'll start with the 5-minute S&P chart, which I think was pretty revealing. We basically came back to where we were to start the day, right? If you remember, futures were bid up pretty decently going into the open. Europe was a bit of a catalyst this morning. Europe was all green. I think France. Let me see where France ended the day, which I honestly forget. But I think France ended up over 0.5% on the day. So just to kind of give you some basis for today's move. Yeah, almost 1%. Euro stocks were up 60 basis points. And again, we tend to follow what Europe does until the cash open, and then our events take over. But yeah, we've seen this now a couple times where we try to go higher in the beginning of the day. This was 11 o'clock was the high point, and then basically you could draw a little bit of a channel, and we just went basically down all the way till about 3 o'clock. And if you look at the 1 hour, there were some levels, and the level that I was watching in this morning in S&P futures, we actually made it through. So it gave me a little bit of a fake out. We got into value. We went actually right to the point of control, 28.34, and then we bounced out and we closed. So a lot of indecision for tomorrow because it looks like we closed right back at that bottom of value. So I would kind of maybe lean that we are trying to progress here, but it seems like there's negatives and positives on the tape. And so here's where I think it was really telling. The Qs, and reminder that is Apple still the #1 weighting in the Qs, or is it #2 right now? I know they've been flip-flopping, but if we go to the Qs, because Apple did weigh on this group. Microsoft is the top. You could see all the way to the right here that Microsoft is edging out Apple now for the biggest weight, but these two have been going back and forth for the last couple weeks. Amazon, by the way, is not too far in that too, but those three stocks, then you add Google in there too. Those four stocks make up about 40% of the ETF, which is kind of interesting. Again, they got Google in here, so you add those two together, you get almost over 9%. So again, just rounding up or rounding for rounding purposes, you take Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and Google, and that's 40% of the Qs, which is quite a bit. But this was perfect. If you have the value area indicator, this is the TTG Market webs that automatically draw these lines for you every day. You can see there's a VPOC down there too, which I'm surprised we didn't take out. But all the way to the top of value, perfect tag. And these are things just to kind of keep an eye on and set alerts in the beginning of the day. But that was right on cue. And then we actually went to the bottom of value and found support. So like a pinball today in the Qs. But again, just like yesterday, decent moves or swings back and forth. Also, we found that support on the bottom of value. If you turn over, so where I was at, by the way, was the 1 hour. This is now the 5-minute where you could see faster moves. But yeah, I mean, this is that resistance that we saw in the 1 hour. But we found that support. It looks like that bottom of value was both the bottom of value. Sorry, This top of value is the same level on the 1 hour. It's just the bottom of value, right? So here, top of value, it's like a tongue twister. And on the 1 hour, that is the bottom of value. If I can bring that up again, Thinkorswim. So where did these end up today? Just up. Nasdaq futures were up 32 basis points. The Qs were, remember, because of the time difference with how the settlement for the futures, the Qs finished up a little bit higher. But then if you look over, so this is where it starts to get interesting, right? Because you're like, oh, geez, depending on those names, may not have been so good. But the Qs finished up 1% today. So I'm sorry, not the Qs, the IWM, I'm getting confused as I go back and forth. But the IWM had good strength today. And again, it got to the highs at 11, really, really strong, and then just completely turns around. And we found support at the top of value there, and then rallied that last hour. So some good progress, to see the small caps. We talked about that yesterday, that I really want to see the small caps start to outperform again, or at least stop leading the way down. So they certainly did not do that today. And then if you turn, so this is where it gets even more interesting. And again, I'm not in any of these names in the regional banks, but look at what the regional banks did today, right? I mean, I'm kind of just sour on the group. I haven't been in it, so I've missed the downside with the regional banks, but so I'm not going to catch the upside either. But this is probably one thing that I know people have probably been asking for, right? Is not to see the regional banks completely fall apart. So this is good, even though I'm not in any of them. I think it's good for market breadth. We don't want to see those things crumble. I've said for a long time that I don't think you need the banks to be, to rally hard for the S&P to come out and make new highs. But I also don't want to see it crumble. I think that's going to be, I would rather have them chop around and just act like they're no place in basically no man's land, rather than going down really hard, which is what we saw towards the end of last week, especially with that move in interest rates, right? And then another group that's been under the microscope, which has been really weak, was the transports. Now they weren't up that much, but still they're up 1%. And so I bring up these things too to kind of help, because if you're just watching the FANG stocks, or if you're just trading them, there's time to time that the FANG stocks, especially this year, have underperformed the overall market, and have lost market leadership. So, what we do at Tribeca Trade Group is really, we're very objective, and we'll play, whatever area is trending, and what area really starts to pick up, right? We as retail investors, we could do whatever we want to. There's nobody that says that you have to trade a certain group of stocks. So whether it's the banks, whether it's transports, the FANG stocks, you don't have to stay in those stocks. I see a lot of people on Twitter, they like to really go over the FANG stocks a lot. I just think, those were great stocks a couple years ago. They're still, I mean, you kind of have to pick out which one you like. But I don't think making the assumption that these are the market leaders right now, I don't think that that's really the right thing to do. So anyway, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent about that. Also, I think what may have contributed to today being a little bit upside down, meaning some of the laggards were leading. Keep in mind what you have coming on Friday, right? You have, not quadruple witching, but you've got quarter end, right? A lot of institutions will kind of change around their portfolio a bit. They may do window dressing or something like that, but I don't really know all the, I'm not going to know what exactly they're doing, but I just know that it happens on quarter end. So we've got today's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You usually see a couple of these upside down days where you're like, why did this stock get hit so hard? There's no news on it, because usually the institutions are just changing around their portfolio. Why they decide to do it right around this time, I don't have the answer to that. But so I would kind of be aware of that, and be aware of your trading size. with that type of market action. Usually, and I'm not predicting this, but usually we get like a really funky day, meaning like a lot of things sell off pretty hard. And, I say this now about the quarter end because I don't think, maybe it impacted today a little bit, things, but I think you're going to get that later in the week. What day it happens? Will it happen on Friday? Maybe. But sometimes these guys like to really kind of front run an event. So people try to game that stuff as well. What else to kind of talk about for today? I'm looking for a tweet. I can't find it, but I remember there's a tweet that I saw about a month ago, talking about overnight moves versus intraday moves. And somebody there's a lot of people who got very angry because I made the determination that, hey, this is an eye opener for day traders. And again, I don't have the numbers, but if you looked over the last, I think it was 15 years, 1-5, the majority of the outperformance in the S&P has come in the overnight moves, not in the intraday moves. And again, I don't have that tweet to back it up, but it kind of just makes it kind of rings familiar today, seeing how much the market, again, going back to the S&P and even the Qs, which finished lower for where they opened. But, if you take the open and the close, there was no intraday move. Now, of course, that doesn't sum up all the day's moves because you could have gotten long, then you could have gotten short, and you could have day traded the hell out of this. But wouldn't it have been easier just to, now again, if maybe you're awesome at scalping, but wouldn't it have just been easier to kind of hold overnight and then sell on the open? Or sell if you got a little bit lucky, sell in the first couple 5-minute bars, you would have done better than holding all the way to the close. So just something to kind of, and I don't say this stuff to get anybody mad and tell anybody that they're not trading correctly. I just throw these things out there as eye openers, right? That basically we closed right where we opened today. And I think that's just been how it's been recently. Is there's been better overnight moves, and a lot of times you could sell on the open. The problem is I think a lot of times people get greedy, and they want more than what they got by where we opened, and that's always the psychological battle with trading. Looking at your P&L, being a little bit greedy, wanting some more. So anyway, today's option activity. I didn't talk about Apple. There was some steady put buyers in Apple throughout the afternoon. You could see that there was a hammer bar that was put in here. That was kind of the capitulation bar for Apple. But both with Qualcomm, and the funny thing is, this morning there was 3 or 4 analyst upgrades, price target raises. So you would think that because sometimes that gives the stock a little bit of momentum when you have 3 or 4 analysts, increasing their price target. I think Canaccord put this up the street high, and very much a trap day for Apple. And I was looking at Apple as possibly playing it to the long side. Thank goodness I didn't play it to the short side either, which, there was some nice money to be made on that. Went all the way through the value area. So an interesting move there, and I talked about how that was one of the laggards on the day. Could you imagine, S&P up, Q's up, IWM and Apple down 1%. Another one right now that we're seeing puts in. This did okay. It actually came back, but we're seeing a lot of puts in Microsoft too. And it's not like that there's not call buyers too in Microsoft. It just seems like there's more. We're seeing just more put buying. Now these you have to ignore because they're buy rights. This was also tied, but you could see, these are sweeps, and there is some put buying going on in Microsoft. Again, could be a little bit because of quarter end. Maybe people are going to get out of a winner a little bit and go into something else. So what did I do today? A couple names that did pretty nice. This was a trade that we added yesterday. This was a swing trade that I sent out to TTG members. SV. Oh, what is it? SV. This is the worst symbol in the world. This is What, Service Monkey? I forgot what this name was, to be honest, with the symbol. I thought it was another application software name. It's Service Monkey. I completely forgot. Look at this thing, up 10%. Now this is sometimes I bash and I'm negative on option activity. This gave me a really good alert. We saw call buying about 2 or 3 days in a row. This started, I think, on Friday, and then we saw heavier activity yesterday. And once I see something where, again, it has to be more than one reason why I take a trade. But I thought the chart looked like it was pretty not coiled, but just coming into support. So many inside days, or so many small little days into support, that it was enough for me to take that trade. I put that trade on yesterday, up 10%, and I own both stock and calls in this one. So this one gave me a nice little boost. Again, I didn't have a huge trade on it, but when a name goes up 10%. Very nice. Home Depot, again, this is a good example of why I show this name. It ended up down on the day, but I took a target in the beginning of the day. So, that's, again, making sure, and I did this in a couple names today. I made sure that I hit a target. We were talking about this in the trading room today, and I was saying, hey, I originally had a target. I'm in June calls, and I think my entry price is 525. My first target that I had this morning was 615, and I moved it in. I wanted to make sure that I took some money off the table into strength, because you can always add that target back, which is what I did at the end of the day. But it's important to have enough of a position where you could take several targets, and that you can manage the position so that you're making adjustments into strength and into weakness. Because right now this market is giving you plenty of opportunities, right? Here was a spike in Home Depot. You could sell some. Again, you just have to make sure that you're getting the target. And if you have a fixed percentage target out there, you got to adjust it. Because I think I had one out for like 15 or 20%, and I moved it down, so it was probably, I think, around like 12% or something like that, 10 or 12%. So you got to take what the market gives you. Another one that we did this was ServiceNow, right? I put on ServiceNow. This actually didn't give back any profits, but I forced myself out of the position. This was something that I added late in the day on Friday. Again, not a huge position, but ServiceNow has been one of those stocks that I want to get involved in on dips, right? It's a very, very strong name. And on any market pullbacks, I'll get involved in things like ServiceNow, Team, which I also took a small position in today, or Twilio. Any of these have been your market leaders. So these are the names that I want to buy on dips, and I'll keep doing that until it doesn't work. But look at Zscaler. This is one that I've been trading back and forth. I didn't get involved in it today, so we saw another call buyer. But this is your market leadership. But yeah, so ServiceNow, I think I got into some calls just to kind of nail home the point. These were calls for a couple months out. Where's my trade in this? Oh, I can't. Sorry, I'm on another computer, and I can't find it. But I think I went into some calls for about $10, and I took them off for like 11.30 or 11.40, just because I've seen this play out too many times, and it's a little bit of pattern recognition. But right in the beginning of the day, I said, fine, I'm out. I made 15% on a position that I held for a day and a half. And that's fine. Let's not be too greedy, because this market looked like it might roll over a little bit. So that's how you kind of want to manage some positions, and just not get too overly greedy. So how does this set up for tomorrow? By the way, were there any really that notable trades for the day? Notice I have a lot more calls on the list, but they were buying some things like SQQQ. They were buying VIX calls today. I have to check the open interest, anything I have an asterisk next to. CTSX, which was Chatter. They were buying Twitter in the beginning of the day. They were buying some JD, Facebook. So all this stuff, again, doesn't mean that that they're guaranteed to go up just because another buyer is in there. But you know, maybe those are some names to monitor. So again, I think right now with the way the market is moving going into quarter end, you kind of take things day by day and look for those names that you want to add when the market is down a little bit. What else did I add today, or what else am I looking at? Oh, so final note, as the video is 20 minutes, keep an eye on these moves in interest rates. You know, I'm starting to look. I really, you know, honestly can't get too involved in consumer staples, but we saw a nice trade in SPG, which is a REIT. We saw this last, I think on Friday we saw this. A couple of traders took it in the room and made some nice money on SPG. So again, something different, a REIT, right? So I'm looking at XLV. Just something, now this may have been under pressure a little bit because the managed care names were under pressure, but I would be watching names that have a high dividend yield. Again, I think that you might see a little bit of rotation into some higher dividend names, considering what you know, the overall bond yield is in treasuries right now. All right, so that's enough for one day's video. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.